Okay, hi everyone. I hope you had a great morning, great presentations. So, welcome to the jungle, everyone. Or at least, technology jungle, seen from front-end developer experience and perspective. So let me first introduce myself. I've been in industry for over 16 years and doing some front-end and back-end development over the years, but my passion to the front-end started in mid-90s, where we actually didn't call it a front-end. So there was no JavaScript frameworks, no tools, no builds. There was era of Netscape and Microsoft front page. Over the years, I worked in many different places on different projects and with many different tools and seen how this front end evolved from the static HTML and CSS to what we have here and now. So in this presentation, I would like to share my perspective on the current state of the front end landscape and how it's evolved and what we have in e-commerce, as this is the area of my interest in last years. So drawing from my own experience, I will also show you what it means to be a front-end developer these days. So, do we have any front-end developers in the room? Yeah? Okay, great, great. How many frameworks do you know? One? You know one framework, just one? Two? Five? Who knows five more? Five? Okay, yeah. So for all those who are not front-end developers, and imagine you have a great, bright idea for a web application, and of course, you need a front-end. So to start with, you need to pick tools, frameworks, and libraries, and the moment you start, you're bombarded with this array of choice. So we have like React, Angular, Vue, Svelte, Next.js, Gatsby, Tailwind, Material, Shade.cn, Redux, Vite, Webpack, and this goes on and on and on. So there is no clear path. So as I said, it's not just a HTML, CSS. We're not just changing the colors of the buttons. There is over 500,000 words in Oxford English Dictionary. Some say if you count different variation and some old words, it's even more than 700,000 words in this dictionary. And for last year, in 2023, there was 3.1 million NPM packages that serves for front-end. The JavaScript is the first and the most popular language on GitHub. Last year, TypeScript grew 37%, becoming third most popular language on GitHub, pushing Java out of the podium. So maybe now some people will finally learn what's the difference between Java and JavaScript, and you know what people I'm talking about, okay? So to give you an idea of how many JavaScript libraries out there, I have a theory. You can pick any random word from a dictionary. You can add JS to it, and the chances are you will find a JavaScript library for this. So I've been doing some experiment, and I've been testing this. So let's see. A serendipity. And to be honest, you have the definition here. And to be honest, I didn't even know this word before. And I lived in UK for about 6 years. So this turns out to be a thing, and someone called it a JavaScript library. It's generating random numbers. Okay, banana. Okay, we know it's a fruit. It's the name of a tree, of course. Yeah, and according to GitHub repository description, it's also a JavaScript component-driven framework. Nice. Have you ever used Banana.js to build a website? Okay, me neither, to be honest. So to better understand this situation, let's have a closer look on the good and bad sides of having all these tools. So we know that modern frameworks gives us scalability. We can build large and complex applications. We can handle advanced UI management and handle complex UI in tools like React and Angular. They have a rich ecosystem, all these S-link, pre-configured, CLIs, etc. It's awesome, right? Also, the great customization. You can mix and match the tools to serve the specifics of your requirements on your project. So the beauty of that landscape is that every niche has been covered. But on the other hand, simple projects can often become unnecessarily complex. We have a choice paralysis because there is so many options. Developer cannot choose the right tool. Then what if they don't? Like, if I pick wrong, will I have this technical debt in a year or so? Or maybe I'll need to rewrite the whole application. And you know, there's this uncertainty because some projects can be abandoned and closed, and there might be a new, better version next year, and you will have to rewrite everything again. And this learning curve, it's, you know, every time new tool arrives, you need to spend some time learning and learning again. And you know, if every project is in different technology and different framework, you need to spend some time, and these costs are enormous. So what does it mean? So in these days, we're not just building the HTML and CSS pages. We need to think about building process, tree shaking, lazy loading, SSRs, hydration, everything around. And we also need to develop those skills and, you know, like learning and adapting to this new environment. And as a result, the burnout is quite a concern. And this pressure called like jack of all trades, we need to know it, and people expect from us to know it all the frameworks, all the tools and design systems and deployment methods and management and everything. Jack of all trades. This is a figure of speech from 16th century that evolved in 18th century to what's on the screen. And let's think about this. This phrase means that, in our case, of course, a front-end developers often have to know a little bit about many different technologies without becoming a true expert in any one of them. While just might not master a single area, the wide range of skills is often more valuable than focusing only on one. Being adaptable and able to handle various tasks sometimes better than being an expert in just one thing, especially in a field that changes so quickly as front-end development. Okay? Remember our experiment? So now check this word. You know that marshmallow? Sweet and fluffy and gooey, and turns out to be a basic AUF middleware for Express. Okay. So before we dive into the front end and in e-commerce, let's take a moment to refresh the understanding of the architectures and systems and all this around that we need to find ourselves. So, monolith. Now picture the system as a giant elephant, powerful elephant in the jungle. It's massive, but it gets its job done, and it moves slowly. Like an elephant, monoliths can handle a lot. But when a new business comes, even the smallest change can shake the whole system. Even tweaks just related to backend can force us to change some front end and making this development like a nightmare. So it's no matter if you sell shoes, clothes, books, whatever, the specific doesn't matter. The e-commerce website has all those. We need 3 layers: data, business logic, and presentation. They're usually the same technological stack, mostly Java, PHP, ASP.NET. We have this all functionalities inside, tangled together like the vines in the jungle, and changing one piece of the system affects the other, and it's like a chain reaction. And for us developers, front-end developers, this is quite not easy situation, and this makes significant challenges. Any adjustments, we cannot deploy how we want. We cannot use the tools that we want, and so there is also a headless, like a spider, flexible web, and making flexible web and strong and adaptable, and to be honest, I picked this because spiders are great web developers, designers. Okay, so headless. We decoupled the front end from the rest of the system. There's still mostly a monolith behind. We created the API layer so that we can communicate with our front end. And now we can choose any tool we want to build like single-page application in Angular, React, or Vue. We can even distribute this to different channels like desktop and mobile and IoT devices, and there's so many possibilities. So much better than the monolith itself. So decoupling the front end from the back end is one thing. But imagine going even further. What if we could slice the rest of the system into individual specialized parts? And this is like breaking into different domains. Picture like a jaguar, sleek and powerful, able to move swiftly between different terrains in the jungle. So in this approach, we treat each part of the system like an isolated service. PIM is one, OMS is another, maybe even CMS when we need to deliver some static content to the website. And these microservices are separated. The only thing missing into this is a cloud, which gives us scalability and flexibility to support all these moving parts. So MAC stands for microservices, API first, cloud, and headless. So we can create these new functionalities, and even the backend is happy now because they don't need to, change one thing only. They can work in separate groups and etc. So everyone's happy now. And the composable commerce entered the scene a couple of years ago. And now imagine this jungle's most adaptable creature, the chimpanzee. It uses different tools, each selected for specific task. It doesn't matter where it's gathering food, building shelter, or whatever chimpanzee does in the jungle. I don't know. But this mirrors the composable commerce in e-commerce world. So here, each element of the system, whether it's PAM or OMS or even smaller parts like shopping baskets, payment gateways, CMS, reviews, becomes an individual tools. And they all built with the Mac architecture underneath. These not just microservices. These are individual parts that we called in this approach a package business capabilities, because inside this, for example, e-commerce block, you can have multiple microservices that they also have decoupled front end, they also have cloud and the API. And you can also have like small tools like basket service. And this can be your package, and you can adapt it for your needs in your projects, but it still serves the same purpose underneath. I even better like this approach to showing what the composable commerce is. Like, just imagine this, where your payment gateway provider is charging you more and more and more for new functionalities, new card providers, etc. You can just get rid of it and take something different. If your CMS has no functionalities that your business requires, you can swap it with something different. There is no vendor lock-in in this approach. Okay, staying in the jungle. Speaking of animals, chameleon. We know it's the animal from its adaptability to change colors, and also seems to have a side job as a jQuery plugin. Okay, so how front-end developers adapt in this composable commerce and the smart architectures? So migration to composable commerce is one of the things that I think is something natural that businesses will follow in a year or two, maybe more. But if you think about this migration to composable commerce from the monolith, like the composition of monolith, this serves multiple purposes, not only for developers, but also for business. And you can take each part of the system and split it into smaller bits. And we, as front-end developers, we're not only responsible here for building beautiful interfaces, but we can plan the architectures and, for this decomposing of monolith. And this isn't just about breaking things apart. It's just designing the modular systems that can grow. And incremental improvements are something natural. We can roll out these changes without worrying about disrupting the entire system, and it's like clearing a single part of the map in the jungle. Sounds good. And performance optimizations becomes natural benefit, because we can fine-tune each component and each module and introduce like lazy loading and code splitting and reducing bundle size. So there is nothing that stops us to do it, and it's even better. And there is something called front-end architecture. It's like everyone knows that there is something like that, but no one actually says it. By using design patterns and micro front-ends and component-based architectures, we can ensure that our applications are reusable, modular, scalable. This means that breaking down this large monolith component, we are just diving into the smaller parts. Also, beyond the visible, so we're not just changing the front end as what we see in the browser, but we can also achieve many of the things in the backend. So I know it's, some say doing front end and back end in JavaScript, it's not full stack, I know. But on the other hand, this new tools gives us this possibility to improve our websites by server-side rendering and static site generation, and this all benefits with performance, optimization, and SEO. And we're not just stopping into just rendering. In storefronts, we are managing middlewares where we can adjust and tweak some API requests, authentication, and even security. But it doesn't even stop there. If you think about tools like Node.js, Express, Nest.js, or Prisma, we can even build a legit backend and fully functional API. Of course, some would say Java belongs to the backend or PHP or whatever. I understand, but fair enough. We can create that in the front end as well. And let's introduce backend for front end. This is like our personal assistant for the optimization of the web. Have you ever tried to convince backend developers and business and management to have one single API endpoint that will combine 10 in the backend? Even if you saw, then it took probably weeks or months for all this, big stuff to roll. And so you can introduce backend for front end and create your own endpoints that you will call other endpoints from the real backend, and you can introduce some kind of high performance optimization with handling complex calculations. So it's about making this jungle a little bit easier to navigate, reducing this unnecessary noise, and keeping things simple and efficient. And speaking of micro frontends and web components, let's talk about micro frontends. This is like having different teams in your organization, and each micro frontend and each team can work on different features in isolations and using the best tools for the job and deploying without affecting an entire application. The independence allows for diversity of the tools and frameworks, meaning we can adapt to best solution and specific components while ensuring a overall system remains flexible and modular. And then we have web components, the usable elements that make front-end development even more powerful. Think of the web components as your multi-tool in a jungle, encapsulating the functionalities. So whatever you work with React, Angular, Vue, Web Components allows for seamless integration no matter the environment you're working in. Okay. Have you ever heard developers talking about using Apple products? I'm just wondering if they talk about potato. It seems that it's some canvas shape framework. Okay. And staying in this foodie, can you imagine the small talks at developer conference? Have you used Potato.js or no? I've used Strawberry. Strawberry? What? Yeah, actually, it's zero dependency build tree framework for artisanal web, whatever that means. There is a huge amount of all those frameworks. Navigating the tech jungle. With so many libraries and frameworks and tools, the challenge is to not just to choose the right path, it's to avoid all the traps all the way long. When it comes to composable commerce, the beauty is that we don't have to rely on a single tool for the entire project. We can mix and match and combine the best tools for the job. But when you decide, how do you decide which direction to take? So sometimes sticking with something tried and tested is the smart move to do, especially in large-scale projects and enterprise environments. Tools like Angular, React, or Vue are solid, predictable, and came with extensive ecosystems and community support. If your primary goal is stability and support, the boring stack is something that you should consider. And don't be fooled by the name. The boring stack refers to using well-established, reliable technologies or frameworks that are widely adapted and have extensive community support. These tools are considered boring, not because they are, but because they're not cutting edge or flashy, but because they are predictable. And that's what is important in large-scale and enterprise projects. The most important part of your journey is understanding the context. There is no one-size-fits-all tool or framework in the front-end development. Your choice should always be guided by some specifics of the project. So if you're working on a large project and complex with multiple teams, the boring stack might be your best choice. But if you're prototyping or building something modular and flexible, like POCs, yeah, maybe go with some new tools, fancy frameworks. And sometimes the best decision is first to ask yourself or your team what stack they're familiar with. If they know the stack, that can speed up the process of development, but sometimes doing something opposite, doing something new can foster the innovation and grow. And with the long-term projects and maintenance, if you choose well-established framework, can save you a headache down the road. And and if you don't think about the long-term support, you can choose your, you have this freedom to experiment with new tools and, this cutting-edge tools. So let me share with you 2 projects that I've been working on in last years or so to show you how these decisions affects the whole project. So a few years back, I joined a project that was half done, and someone took the decision at the beginning to use a piece of software that fulfilled most of our needs, and most of the functionalities were out of the box, and this library was great. Easy to work with, easy to extend and override, just great. But it was in the beta stage at the time they introduced it to the project. So I've heard that vendor promised business to deliver the production-ready version before we go live. Great. So what could go wrong? Actually, everything. By the time they released a production-ready version, they changed so many things inside that the new version was not compatible with our implementation and the things that we overwrite and extend in this library. The way of handling requests changed, even the way of extending functionalities, and they even moved from JavaScript with optional TypeScript to required TypeScript. Because of someone's bad decision at the start of picking this and believing other business, we spent extra 3 months as a black sprint trying to adapt our implementation. Finally, we did migrate. The project went live. It was a big success. A bit late, but who cares, okay? And there was a presentation yesterday morning, and I think this main thing was in this presentation that everybody lies. Yeah, businesses are special. Okay, all the time I had this project of building really large-scale headless B2B e-commerce platform from scratch. And by the time we start, we didn't have any specific requirements and just few business documents, maybe few drafts or design and like some PDFs, etc. Nothing really. So we started by dividing these designs piece by piece, like drawing lines between possible in future components, and started to creating interfaces and facades and classes, etc., just from these few documents. And the framework we chose that time was Angular. And because of the complexity and the rules defined by the Angular, we are able to design the system with so little information we had. It helped us and guide us with its modules, design patterns, everything, to start prototyping the system. And it went very good. We went live a year later with no single day of delay. So choosing the right stack for you. So sometimes you don't have a choice, and sometimes it's a bad call from someone else and you need to live with it. But if you can decide, and if you can suggest the approach, remember to go with the tools that you know, you have the expertise in your team, and remember that the context is your guidance. So after everything we covered, from breaking down monolithic systems to building this modular storefronts and diving into backend somehow, it all starts with something that is visible to the end user. It all starts with the front end. But the role of front-end developer in the composable commerce goes far beyond. We're not just tweaking the color of the button or adjusting the layouts anymore. We're architects, we're shaping the entire user journey, navigating the complexities of modern architectures and building scalable and modular solutions. We push the boundaries of what is possible. So, yes, it may all start with the front end, but as we've seen, it clearly doesn't end there. Okay, if you would like to have a chat and talk about the composable commerce and experiences and things like that, yeah, you can find my LinkedIn on this QR code and we can have a chat later on. And I know it's lunchtime in 3 minutes, so I tried to keep it short. So yeah, great. Thank you very much for coming, for listening, and thank you very much.